Imagine living somewhere so remote that running out of coffee means a 3-hour round trip, where your nearest neighbor might be miles away, and the sound of another human voice is something you actually have to seek out. Most Americans live surrounded by constant noise, endless traffic, and neighbors so close you can hear their conversations through the walls. But scattered across this country are places that exist in a completely different reality. Towns where isolation isn't just a feeling, it's a geographic fact. Today, we're counting down the 10 most isolated communities in America, ranked by their remoteness, accessibility, and just how disconnected they are from the world most of us know. By the time we reach number 1, you'll discover a place where cars literally cannot go, where the outside world feels like a distant memory. Let's dive in. Starting at number 10, we have Valentine, Nebraska, a town that sits in the heart of the Great Plains like a small island in an ocean of grass. With around 2,700 residents, Valentine isn't microscopically small, but what defines it is the sheer distance separating it from anywhere else that matters. The grasslands here roll endlessly in every direction, creating horizons so wide they seem to challenge the curvature of the earth itself. The nearest city of any substantial size lies hours away down highways that stretch straight and empty, the kind of roads where you might drive 30 minutes without seeing another vehicle. These aren't routes you travel casually. Every trip requires intention, planning, and a full tank of gas. Life in Valentine moves to a rhythm completely foreign to urban America. Yes, there are grocery stores, schools, and medical clinics, but the pace is unhurried, almost meditative. When darkness falls, the town doesn't transition into nightlife because there isn't any. Street lights become sparse, businesses close their doors early, and a profound quiet settles over everything. The people who choose Valentine do so deliberately. They value knowing every face they pass, appreciate the predictability of each day, and find comfort in the absence of chaos. There's a particular kind of peace that comes from living where nature dominates and human activity takes a back seat. Valentine earns the number 10 spot because while it's genuinely isolated, it still maintains solid connections to the broader world. The loneliness here is real but manageable, a gentle introduction to what true isolation actually means. Moving to number 9, we find Marfa, Texas, a town that feels like it exists in its own separate dimension of time. Deep in West Texas, Marfa sits surrounded by desert that extends in every direction until it meets distant mountain ranges barely visible through the heat shimmer. With approximately 1,800 residents, the town itself has a population, but the emptiness surrounding it creates an overwhelming sense of smallness. Getting to Marfa requires commitment. The nearest major city is separated by hours of driving through landscape that offers little more than scrub brush, occasional ranch gates, and livestock that seem to question why anyone would voluntarily travel through such desolation. The pace of life here defies modern expectations. Businesses operate on schedules that seem arbitrary. Services close early, sometimes without warning. Once the sun sets, the desert night brings a silence so complete it feels almost aggressive, especially to anyone accustomed to the ambient noise of civilization. What makes Marfa fascinating is its unexpected artistic soul. Scattered throughout and around this isolated town are large-scale art installations that seem absurdly out of place against the harsh desert backdrop. Massive geometric sculptures sit in fields where you'd expect nothing but empty land. Gallery spaces occupy buildings that look like they should be abandoned. This strange combination attracts a specific type of person who craves both solitude and creative stimulation. The isolation is profound, but it comes with character, with unexpected encounters with human expression in the middle of nowhere. Marfa ranks at number 9 because while distance defines it, the town maintains enough cultural activity to prevent complete disconnection. It's remote, certainly, but not forgotten, just profoundly distant and wonderfully strange. At number 8, we encounter Terlingua, Texas, a settlement that hovers somewhere between a functioning town and a ghost story. Located near Big Bend National Park, Terlingua occupies some of the most unforgiving desert terrain in North America. The Chihuahuan Desert here is relentless, a landscape of extreme heat, sparse vegetation, and geological formations that look almost alien. The population fluctuates around 100 people, and that number can drop dramatically depending on the season and who's actually counted. This isn't a place with clear boundaries or official records. It's a collection of people who have chosen to exist at the edge of conventional society. Isolation in Terlingua operates on multiple levels simultaneously. Geographic distance is just the beginning. Services are extremely limited. The nearest substantial town requires a significant drive through desert, where help, if something goes wrong, is measured in hours, not minutes. Cell phone coverage is unreliable at best. Internet access is often satellite-based and frustratingly slow. Daily life requires a level of self-sufficiency that most Americans never develop. Running out of basic supplies isn't a minor inconvenience. It's a genuine problem that requires planning and preparation. The heat during summer months becomes a factor in every decision. The isolation becomes mental as much as physical. Nights in Terlingua bring an eerie quiet, the kind of silence where you become acutely aware of every sound, every breath of wind, every distant call of wildlife. The darkness is complete, unbroken by streetlights or neighboring houses. People remain here for the freedom that extreme isolation provides, for the desert itself, and for the feeling that society's rules and expectations simply don't apply anymore. Terlingua claims number 8 because while devastatingly lonely, there's still a scattered community just spread impossibly thin across unforgiving land. Number 7 brings us to Eureka, Nevada, sitting along U.S. Route 50, which carries the official designation, the loneliest road in America. This title wasn't chosen for dramatic effect. It's an accurate description of what traveling this route actually feels like. The road stretches across Nevada's high desert for hundreds of miles with remarkably little interruption from human civilization. Eureka itself houses roughly 500 residents, surrounded entirely by desert basin and distant mountain ranges. The spacing between towns along this corridor isn't measured in the way normal Americans think about distance. Towns here are separated by expanses so large that running low on gas becomes a legitimate emergency. Life in Eureka follows patterns that barely change from day to day, season to season, year to year. There are fundamental services, a store, a gas station, basic infrastructure, but nothing beyond absolute necessity. Entertainment is conversation, watching the weather patterns move across the open sky, or simply accepting the repetitive nature of existence here. When night arrives, it arrives completely. There's no gradual transition with lingering twilight and distant city glow. Darkness falls across the desert like a curtain, and the silence becomes almost physical, something you feel as much as hear. The people who stay in Eureka appreciate predictability and space in quantities that most people can't comprehend. There's comfort in knowing that tomorrow will closely resemble today, that the landscape won't change, that the isolation provides protection from the chaos consuming more populated places. Gas stations are precious resources. The nearest store with anything beyond absolute basics could be an hour away or more. Residents learn quickly that forgetting items on a shopping trip isn't just inconvenient, it's potentially serious. Every outing requires mental checklists and careful planning. Daily existence revolves around the natural environment and personal responsibility. There's no traffic because there aren't enough vehicles. There's no noise pollution because there's nothing to create it. The silence is constant and noticeable, the kind of quiet where you hear your own heartbeat. At night, the sky transforms completely. With virtually no light pollution, stars appear in quantities that seem impossible to people from urban areas. The Milky Way stretches visibly overhead, and darkness becomes so complete that artificial lights, when they appear, seem almost offensive. People choose Hanksville for the dramatic solitude and the landscape that looks like another planet. The isolation is intentional and demanding, requiring constant awareness and preparation. Hanksville sits at number 6 because while deeply isolated and challenging, it maintains a thread of connection to the broader world for those willing to work for it. Number 5 presents something different. Garden City, Kansas. With a population around 25,000 people, it's by far the largest community on this list, which makes its inclusion surprising until you understand what isolation actually means here. Garden City appears completely normal at first glance. There are schools, hospitals, shopping centers, restaurants, and residential neighborhoods that could exist in countless American communities. The infrastructure is solid. Services are comprehensive. Daily life functions smoothly with all modern conveniences readily available. The isolation here isn't about lacking people or amenities. It's about geography and mathematics. Statistically, Garden City sits farther from other similarly sized cities than almost anywhere else in the United States. It's an island of population in an ocean of agricultural land. Leave the city limits in any direction, and the landscape immediately transforms into endless farmland. Flat Earth stretches to distant horizons, broken only by irrigation systems, grain elevators, and occasional farm buildings. Highways cut straight lines through this agricultural expanse for miles and miles without variation. The isolation becomes psychological over time. Everything you need exists locally, but everything else, cultural events, specialized shopping, different restaurants, entertainment options beyond the basics, exists hours away. Travel means committing to long drives with minimal visual stimulation, the same flat landscape repeating endlessly. Over time, residents describe a subtle feeling of disconnection, not from their immediate community, which functions well, but from the broader world. News from distant cities feels more distant. Trends arrive later. The sense of being removed from the mainstream becomes a constant background awareness. Garden City ranks number 5 because it represents a unique form of isolation, fully functional and socially active, yet geographically alone in a way that slowly becomes noticeable in daily consciousness. Moving to number 4, we encounter Whittier, Alaska, one of the most unusual communities in America. Approximately 260 people live here, and nearly the entire population resides in a single, massive structure called the Baggage Towers. From outside, the building resembles an abandoned Cold War facility more than a residential complex, a stark concrete structure rising against the Alaskan landscape. What makes Whittier extraordinarily isolated is its accessibility, or rather, the lack thereof. The only land access is through a single tunnel carved through a mountain. This tunnel operates on a schedule, opening and closing at specific times. When it closes for the night, Whittier becomes completely cut off from the outside world. No vehicles enter, no one leaves. The isolation isn't just geographic, it's scheduled and absolute. The climate compounds the isolation significantly. Weather in Whittier is cold, wet, and unpredictable for much of the year, with precipitation measured in the hundreds of inches annually. This isn't weather that encourages outdoor activity. It's weather that drives people indoors and keeps them there. Because nearly everyone lives in the same building, daily life takes on a unique character. The structure contains apartments, a school, small businesses, and offices. Most social interaction, most daily activities, most of human life happens within this single architectural envelope. You're never truly alone because neighbors are always present, just floors or hallways away, yet you're profoundly isolated from everywhere else. Privacy exists, but it's complicated. Distance from other people is minimal. Distance from alternative communities is extreme. Everyone knows everyone because there's no way to avoid knowing everyone. Whittier claims number 4 because it represents a paradox. You're surrounded by community, yet completely removed from the rest of civilization, living in enforced togetherness while being profoundly separated from the broader world. At number 3, we arrive at Chicken, Alaska, a settlement so small it barely qualifies as a town by any conventional definition. The population rarely exceeds 20 people, and during certain months, particularly the brutal winter period, that number can drop to single digits as even the hardiest residents temporarily relocate. There are no neighborhoods here, no residential streets, no semblance of traditional town structure. Just a handful of buildings scattered across rugged terrain in one of the most remote corners of Alaska. The isolation in Chicken operates on an extreme level even by Alaskan standards, which is saying something. Winters are long, dark, and punishing, with temperatures plunging dramatically and remaining dangerously cold for months. Roads become unreliable or completely impassable. Weather conditions can isolate the community entirely for extended periods where leaving becomes impossible, and supplies must last until conditions improve. Daily life revolves entirely around survival basics and unwavering routine. Every supply run must be planned meticulously. Mistakes aren't just inconvenient, they're potentially dangerous. There's no running to a store for forgotten items. There are no stores in any traditional sense. Everything requires forethought, preparation, and backup plans. The silence here is broken only by natural sounds, wind moving through trees, wildlife passing nearby, the occasional vehicle struggling along rough roads. Human voices are rare commodities. Conversation requires effort and intention. The people who remain in Chicken have chosen this level of isolation deliberately. They're not trapped or forgotten. They've actively rejected crowds, constant stimulation, and modern distractions in favor of a life defined by self-reliance, natural rhythms, and extreme solitude. Chicken earns number 3 by combining punishing climate, minimal population, and relentless geographic isolation into a package that represents one of the most demanding environments for human habitation in America. Number 2 brings us to Lost Springs, Wyoming, frequently cited as the smallest incorporated town in America. This isn't marketing exaggeration or technical loophole. The population literally fluctuates between 1 and 4 people, depending on the year. Not households, not families. Individual human beings. There are no neighborhoods because there's no population to create neighborhoods. Just scattered buildings surrounded by vast Wyoming plains and an overwhelming sense of emptiness that's almost difficult to comprehend. The town sits quietly in the landscape, far from major highways and even farther from anything resembling a city or substantial community. The land around Lost Springs is characterized by grassland, wind, open sky, and very little else. Daily life here is defined entirely by silence and solitude. There's no ambient noise whatsoever, no traffic sounds, no distant conversations, no accidental human interaction of any kind. If you want to speak with another person, you must actively plan it, travel to where they are, make it an event. Otherwise, days are filled with wind moving across open land, sky changing colors, and stillness that never really breaks. Time feels different when there's no one around to mark its passage, when days blend together without social interaction to distinguish one from another. The isolation in Lost Springs isn't accidental or the result of economic decline. It's deliberate. The people who maintain residence here have chosen this level of solitude intentionally. There are no distractions, no obligations to others, no social expectations, no urgency imposed by external forces. Lost Springs earns the EBA number 2 position because it represents isolation in nearly its purest form. Almost nothing happens here, and for the residents, that's not a problem to be solved. It's the entire point. And finally, at number 1, we reach Supai, Arizona, the most isolated community in the contiguous United States, and this isn't a close competition. Supai sits deep within the Grand Canyon, completely cut off from the modern transportation infrastructure that connects the rest of America. There are no roads here, none. No highways, no streets, no driveways, no parking lots. The only ways to reach Supai are by foot along a challenging trail, by mule carrying supplies and occasionally people, or by helicopter when weather permits and emergency justifies the expense. This isn't isolation you can simply drive away from when it becomes inconvenient. This is isolation built into the fundamental geography, unchangeable and absolute. Life in Supai moves at a pace completely foreign to modern American existence. Distance becomes heavier when every mile must be walked or flown. Modern convenience simply doesn't exist in recognizable forms. Mail arrives by mule train, a system that sounds charming until you're waiting for something important. Groceries require extensive planning because resupply isn't a daily option. Leaving town for any reason requires significant effort, time, and deliberate intention. Medical emergencies become complicated. Weather impacts everything, sometimes making the community completely inaccessible for days. The isolation creates challenges that most Americans never consider because their lives are built on the assumption of accessibility. Supai is home to the Havasupai people, and this isolation has preserved cultural traditions and ways of life that would have disappeared in more accessible locations. But preservation comes with costs. Life is harder here in ways both obvious and subtle. Supai earns the #1 position because it isn't just lonely or remote. It's fundamentally disconnected from the infrastructure that defines modern American life. No roads, no shortcuts, no easy options, just canyon walls, measured distance, and a way of life that exists completely outside the mainstream. So there you have it, the 10 most isolated communities in America, from quiet prairie towns to a village you literally cannot drive to. These places exist in the same country as New York City, Los Angeles, and Chicago, yet they might as well be on different planets. Some people spend their entire lives running from silence, filling every moment with noise and activity and constant stimulation. Others deliberately build their lives around it, choosing isolation, embracing solitude, and finding peace in the absence of crowds. The question isn't whether these places are better or worse than urban America. They're just profoundly different, representing choices about how to exist, what to value, and what kind of life feels worth living. Could you handle life in any of these communities? Which one could you survive in or even thrive in? Let us know in the comments. And if this look at America's most isolated places surprised you, hit that like button and subscribe for more explorations of the hidden, the unusual, and the overlooked corners of this massive country.